Welcome to the Data Driven Supply Chain Podcast. We have a very exciting guest today, Mr. Ramee Mossa, CEO of FTEX. I'm actually particularly thrilled because every time I hear about a company innovating in the EV space and making it more accessible, especially here in Canada, it makes me very proud. So we'll start with Ramee. Why don't you introduce a bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about FTEX?
Sure. So I'm Ramee. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at FTEX. My background is actually in political sciences academically, but I worked most of my life as a web developer, a full stack web developer. So I had a passion for hardware. I built my first 3D printer while I was living in San Francisco 6-7 years ago. And since then, I haven't looked back. I started with building drones, and I started my first company as a TriStar multicopters. I still have a T-shirt right here, building giant industrial drones with a focus on super long flight time. So this is how actually FTEX started. It was a terrible market to get into drones, but we developed an innovative inverter or motor controller for drone motors that allowed us to fly more efficiently, to use up less electricity per power output out of our motors, and give us an extra 5-10% of flight time. When we discovered that the drone market was a terrible market to get into, mostly because it was dominated by huge Chinese companies, we pivoted towards light EVs and changed the company name from TriStar to FTEX. We adapted the team, the product, the offering, and FTEX was born.
Wow, sounds exciting, and sounds like you guys had a bumpy ride to get where you are today, especially I guess in the EV space. I think they say it's never smooth. It always has a few roadblocks in the road.
Yeah. So when you work with power electronics, there's typically a lot of fires, a lot of explosions, a lot of smoke. We went through all of that to develop our product. We use gallium nitride transistors for our inverters. They're particularly tricky power transistors to work with, but they're more efficient. They have lower resistance. They switch a lot faster, which gives us so many new options when it comes to designing our motor control algorithms to output power more efficiently. And something that we're super proud about in our latest test versus one of our Chinese competitors, that we're able to accelerate from 0 kilometers an hour, so like a 0 speed start. We're able to do it 7 times more efficiently in terms of converting electrical power into mechanical power. And overall, in like a cruise state, so like a steady speed state, we were about 7.5 to 10% more efficient than our competitors, which overall means for the user better performance, still within the regulations. We give them better performance, more power, and we give them more range. So they can either have a smaller battery in a lighter bike that's less expensive, or they can have the same size battery in a heavier bike, but they can go 10-15% longer on that same charge.
Awesome. So I want to dig a bit deeper into the whole productization of what you guys are building. So walk us through a bit of like, what did the first few steps of creating a product like yours look like? What are some of the things to consider for anyone who's sort of like looking to innovate in that field?
Yeah, so the product really, it started off as a basic like inverter, so just turning an electric motor. We thought that the innovation that we had built in, the technology that we had built, was something that was a product that people want. I think something you realized early on is that a product is more than just a technology. It has to solve a problem, a real problem, for real users, real manufacturers in our case. So when we showed the inverter to some of our first clients, they were very happy with performance. They were happy with the size factor, since GaN is significantly more power dense, so we're actually smaller and deliver more power. But when they talked about product that they wanted, it included more features above it. So, what we thought would be like a 1 year development, and then we start manufacturing an inverter, turned into a 2.5 year project, as we work on adding safety features, integrating with all the peripherals on the bike, developing not algorithms, but communication protocols that work with the other parts of their product. So it went from a technological solution to really a full blown product that we're offering to users today.
That's pretty cool. One thing that I see in your case is that it's not like you're innovating within a set framework that like you have something and then you innovate onto something else and then you bring that to market. That's the thing that you're bringing to market. It's literally the innovation. In this case, how do you navigate? Let's say, like you said, the feature set changed. There's the whole dynamic with the building your supply chain that need to change. How did you navigate this? I'm bringing this innovation to the market while trying to make a sustainable business. Like, how did this look like for you?
It's a lot of client calls. It's a lot of user research to figure out what are the things that need to be included into our product. So we had developed an inverter and just like a compute board to control that inverter. It turned into basically an inverter, and on top of it, we had a full vehicle management system. To do this, we had to work very, very closely with our suppliers and distributors to make sure that the things that we wanted to add were cost effective, made sense, were reliable, the lead times were okay, the components were available. So it was a lot of work with a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of different suppliers and distributors, and we had to work with both of them at the same time to make sure that we didn't invent something that was not manufacturable.
Yeah, and coming from a software background where the cycle is faster, it's completely different. Like in hardware, you can't just like half bake it and then send it over and test the user base like that. It's still that's not gonna happen, right?
Yeah, no, you can't do that. You can't have failures. So when somebody's buying a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 bike, you can't just have a failure and like they'll call you, can you fix this for me? That bike could be on the other side of the world, depending on where it was shipped. A failure could mean that we could burn down a house as well. So we have to be a lot more careful. Typically, like the cycles require several weeks, maybe a month to 2 months of carefully selecting components. This is where we work with suppliers and distributors. It would take maybe a month to design a new revision, another month to assemble it, and test it out on an actual bike, and then maybe a few more weeks until we find a bike and install it and have a user testing the final product. So typically our cycles are, we have a cycle per quarter or even less.
Cool. So yeah, you touched on being careful, and we have a couple of engineers in our following. When is a good time, Ramee, to start thinking about supply chain and suppliers, especially for people coming with an engineering background? They're more focused on sort of like innovating, building something which already is quite taxing as a task on its own. But when, based on your experience, when would you say is the best time to start thinking about supply chain and that aspect of the business?
I think it needs to be included from day one. Sometimes you'll think that you have a great innovation, a great product that you want to build and bring to market. And you might be building this on a technology stack that doesn't make sense at all, on components that don't make sense at all, that cost a fortune or that are not available in volume, or the lead times are too long. We learned this the hard way. We had to build a hardware company in the middle of COVID, with supply chain in a complete meltdown, components that were widely available that just disappeared off the market. So it was impossible for us to actually design anything without talking to our suppliers first and making sure that they can guarantee certain prices, certain lead times, and a certain quality and feature set for these products. We have to think about MCUs, for example, microcontrollers. They might be available in 100 pin, they might not be available in 48 pins, and that means that we're going to have more or less features depending on what they can deliver to us. If we develop just with whatever is available on DigiKey, what we can order quickly for prototyping, by the time we get to manufacturing, you're going to figure out that it's going to take you 12 to 24 months before you can actually get first units on the road. And in that time, you're dead.
Oh, right. I thought we had it hard in the in the metal manufacturing space, because we've been discussing with suppliers and stuff, and I've been visiting their facility, and in metal manufacturing, it's pretty rough. But every time I hear someone working like with the electrical component, it's like 10 times worse, right? How do you make sure you stay on top of things with like all of the disruption going on? Like, how do you manage like clearing up this fire and then looking at the next one that's coming in your day-to-day operation?
So in our industry in electronics, like you need to work very closely with distributors. So distributors will do for electronics what maybe Axia is doing for like mechanical components. They'll deal with the suppliers. They'll bring us a selection of suppliers that we can choose from. But it's very manual. So it's people at the distributor that are making phone calls, that are talking to their connections and different suppliers. So we can have some components, you might be able to have 6, 7, 8 different suppliers, and it's interchangeable. Some of them it's not interchangeable, so you have to select that supplier very carefully. You can't do this without that insider information that your distributor has. Maybe they'll know that their factories have extra capacity, or they're at full capacity and they're late on everything. So maybe that's not the supplier you should choose. So we can't stay away. Like we can't develop a product without having those distributors here. We have Future Electronic that we work with, for example. They're in our office every week. This is the kind of relationship that you need to have with them in order to successfully bring a product to market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just to add on that, like this is one of the things that I've heard again and again in the when there is a high variability in the market and the supply chain is like a high risk of breaking up, the best thing you can do is just like lean on the relationship that you built in the past with your supplier. And if you have none, and if everything you did was always transactional, this is where it hurt the most. It's when you don't have this relationship going on and you can't get squeezed in when you need the most. Cool.
Yeah, we've seen that, by the way, many times where we're looking for a component and we can't find it anywhere. Everyone's telling us it's sold out, but we have a relationship with the supplier and we call them directly and they'll make something available for us. Even if it's in small numbers, they'll still help us move a couple of hundred product rather than zero. And it'll trickle in, but it's better than nothing. You can't operate without a good personal relationship with your suppliers.
Cool. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So Ramee, just sort of like bouncing on that idea about like making that relationship with suppliers for someone who's, again, in this innovative field, creating a product that has never, or that barely others have tried to create. What would be like the top 3 things a new innovative product company should look for in suppliers when choosing them? And yeah, and I guess I understand, like for components, it's different for each of the component that you're trying to get would be different. But what would be like the generic top 2, 3 things that those companies should look for in a supplier?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that come to mind right away, and this applies to suppliers for either mechanical components, so plastics, metals, CNC, and to our ICs and electronics components. you need to find suppliers that want to work with innovative companies that maybe have small volumes today but have high potential. Not everybody's willing to do that, and some bigger suppliers may say, yeah, we're interested, but they don't have the capacity to work with. They don't really have the capacity to work with innovative, startups, fast growth companies. So they're going to under support you at first, and then won't be able to scale as quickly as you do down the line. So making sure that you're working with the right suppliers for your type of company is very, very important. That's number one challenge for us. It's the first thing that comes to mind.
Cool, perfect. I want to jump on that because what was this company? I think it's SBB around Montreal. They do a lot of this. They do a lot of helping out in the early stage in the product development. And I've through discussion with them and other companies like them, I've realized that one thing that is stopping this type of company is sometimes a lack of being able to recommend changes in the actual product. So there was this other company that were working with them, and they wanted to do it in one way, right? And then they send the request for quotation to a bunch of people, and then they were there and they were like, "We could do it this way, but I've looked at your stuff, and I think you should be doing this and that." And this was highly valuable because they didn't win this thing, but they ended up getting the contract afterward because they were helping them in this way. In your case, since it's a very specific product, how does the collaboration with the supplier on the product itself look like?
I mean, we've seen a lot of similar things even from electronics. So we could, when we're working closely with a distributor like we are, we typically will tell them what we want to do in terms of end result, and then they'll come back and recommend components for us. So and then we'll build our product on top of that. So we don't always just come with like a bill of materials and say this is what we want. In fact, they build that bill of materials with us at the very, very beginning, based on the specifications that we have for them. So that's not actually, only one distributor has done this with us. So Future Electronics has done that. Others have not so far.
Cool. I guess maybe we're heading towards the conclusion, so I want to ask some concluding questions from you. One is like, if you could list the biggest challenges a new company that is innovating in a space, especially in terms of supply chain, that you will face. So I came up with the idea, I did a bit of prototyping, and I have the product, I have what I want to build, and now I'm thinking about scale. What would be the top 3-4 challenges in terms of building my supply chain or building those lists of suppliers that you see they will face? And the counter to that is like, what would you advise them to do about those challenges?
It's hard to say. We definitely had some problems with scaling because we chose some certain manufacturing processes that didn't scale very well or were very expensive to scale. I would say that you should probably have a manufacturing specialist work closely with you. Even if that doesn't have to be an employee, it could just be a consultant, a friend, someone who works in the field that can just, there's some big, sometimes there's very obvious things that you might not see. And the specialist will see it right away. This is going to cost you a fortune to manufacture, and it's not going to scale very well. You'll be limited to like 10 or 20 per day, which is something that we actually encountered. Now we have to change our manufacturing process to get beyond that. Nothing is going to be better for you than to have someone that just has the experience that can walk you through it. And typically, it doesn't take that long. You sit down with a manufacturing specialist for a couple of days to look at your product and solve 90% of your problems. The other 10%, you can figure it out for later.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Ramee, for all of these nuggets of information. I can see how difficult, like both building a startup and an innovative product on top of this on the hardware space is. Doing it for software, I'm very thankful that my cycle is not that long and that I can be a bit more nimble with it. But it's very cool to get your thought on this. Any last word you want to share with the audience before we conclude?
Yeah, if you can avoid hardware, avoid it. But as I say that, I truly do believe that if you want to have anything more than incremental leaps forward in technology and innovation, you can't avoid it. Hardware is what our world is built on. There is a ton of resources out there. I often mentor other hardware startups just to give them some guidance on. And then my first advice to them is always, look at your supply chain before anything else. But talk to someone like me who has done this before, who's gone through all the pain, so you can avoid it. Hardware is unforgiving. You don't want to be sitting on $200,000-$300,000 worth of product that doesn't work because you missed one capacitor, resistor, or a bug in your firmware that's not updatable. Definitely reach out. The community is strong. If you look at Quebec in EV and in hardware, we're actually very, very strong. We're probably like the strongest province in Canada when it comes to EV investment, EV companies, and EV success stories, hardware success stories. Reach out to people. Don't try to figure it out yourself. There's too many things to figure out.
Fantastic. And how can people reach out to you? Anywhere specific? LinkedIn?
Reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. I guess you're gonna post my name, so you can find me, and I'm always happy to help. I often have founders that come to our office just for coffee meetings, to answer some questions. Happy to help.
Fantastic. So thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Ramee, for this beautiful discussion. And you can catch the Data-Driven Supply Chain on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube also. And we'll see all of you into the next episode.